right, y'all. I am so excited to welcome the amazing Ashley Baillargeon. Baillargeon? I just said it wrong again.
It's okay. Baillargeon, whatever.
I just had her tell me how to say it, and
it's okay.
Still did it. I am happy to welcome. Now the words aren't even coming out of my face. Welcome the wonderful Ashley to the podcast.
I'm excited to be here. So thank you for having me. Yay.
I'm so excited that you took this time. You are such a wonderful person, but you know what? You're going to describe yourself better than I do. So who are you? What do you do? And we'll go from there.
Sure, thanks. So my name is Ashley Baillargeon. I own my own law firm called Baillargeon Law Firm. I'm located in Florida, Central Florida specifically. And I handle family law, domestic violence, and I work with human trafficking survivors and nonprofits. I don't have any human trafficking cases right now, but I usually just work with nonprofits and try to help them get the services that they need for survivors.
So if you've been around the block with me for a minute or two, you already know why she's here. You already know why this gorgeous woman is on the podcast, because she is just a wealth of knowledge that we all desperately need. A couple of episodes ago, I did a podcast interview with, Freshwaters. I think they're out of somewhere on the East Coast, an anti-human trafficking organization. I have to remember to put the anti part in there because if you got to be careful.
Yeah.
But it's crazy how much overlap there is between domestic violence, abusive relationships, and human trafficking. And it's just, it's so much. And my heart is just so wrapped around I can't even form words. So without all of my blabbing getting in the way, why don't we dive right in? Because the reason I brought you on is because I know that you are in Florida and, things vary from county to county, let alone state to state, country to country. But I would love to just dig into your brain, and regardless of, she's not your lawyer. She doesn't have the lawyer-client relationship, all of that stuff. But what are the top three things that you would tell a survivor, that just got out or is thinking of getting out in order to move forward with the case? I worded that horribly, but
it's okay. So a lot of times, since I do family law and I do domestic violence cases, sometimes with the family law cases, it's very it doesn't happen very often where people just say, I'm in an abusive marriage, or psychologically abusive. Sometimes people will say psychologically abusive or mentally abusive. I have still never had anyone ever say it's physically abusive. And I don't ever ask those questions because usually it's very taboo. But if someone reaches out to me for a restraining order or an injunction, it's what we call it here in Florida, what I do is I try to hear the facts of their case and see if they really do have a case. I'm not saying that they don't, but you want to have enough evidence built up against the other person to make sure that you have at least enough evidence to go in front of the judge. Because I don't know how it works in Washington, but here in Florida, there's a couple different options. So if you don't have enough evidence when you're filling out the paperwork to try to get a restraining order or an injunction against someone, you're not even going to go in front of the judge. So you won't even go in front of the judge at all if you don't have enough evidence that the court feels. So you want to make sure you have enough evidence. So if someone reaches out to me, first thing I'm going to say is, are you okay? Are you in a safe place? Because sometimes the phones are being monitored. And especially with technology, it's not hard to be crazy. So it's really not that hard. So people are either tracking you or recording your phone or whatever, or maybe your abusers somewhere in the house, maybe there's cameras or something. So if I feel someone's truly not okay, I'm going to say, are you in a safe place? Are you okay right now? Can you talk to me right now? So normally when they reach out to me, normally they're not with that person anymore, usually. So we just try to go through the facts. What kind of evidence do you have? Do you have any witnesses? Have you called the police? Do you have it on record? Do you have any police report? Do you have any text messages? So I try to just get as much as we possibly can to try to make the case as strong as we possibly can against the other side and everything. So I kind of jibber jab a lot. So did that answer the question, or did I
Yes.
go into something
No,
different?
yeah, that was
Okay.
great.
Okay.
I love that because I was going to ask like what type of evidence, like, and then you roll right into it. I think that's perfect. The thing that stands out to me the most in a lot of cases is that people are afraid to come forward, like for a variety of reasons. Either it's fear of the abuser themselves or a fear of a system that isn't really going to support the survivor. And so having someone who is going in there with a heart for the cause is so rare. But what is something, how do I phrase this? If someone is afraid to come forward, what would be the advice that you give?
So that's a really great question. So with domestic violence survivors, or if someone's currently still in that situation, I have personally been in that situation myself. And I believe you told me, Karleigh, you were as well, right? So that was one of the things we talked about when we spoke before. So with domestic violence survivors or victims, if they're still in that moment, like still in that relationship, you can't, if someone has not been in that situation, you can't tell someone who is in that situation, get out. Leave. Like it doesn't work like that, because what the abusers do is they really work on you psychologically and emotionally, and they usually work on you with trying to get you secluded from like your friends, your family, like finances, maybe like, a job. So you really truly depend on them, and they keep you in longer and longer and longer, and it's harder and harder to get out. So if you don't know it, like if you feel that someone is in an abusive relationship and it's not, you, the person that's listening, I would be very careful with how you approach it. Don't say get out, because first of all, they have to be ready. A person who is in a very abusive relationship, either physically, psychologically, or both, they have to be like willing and ready to move on. They have to say, I'm not going to live like this anymore. I can't live like this anymore. And they have to be willing to leave. Now, the last time I did the research on this, it was around 7 to 8 times it takes an abuse victim to leave their abuser, because they keep going back, and then the abuser gives the same crap they always do. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I love you. I swear it'll never happen again, which we all know is a pile of crap. But they use that against the abuse, the abuse victim, because maybe they have kids with that person. Maybe this is their spouse. It's really, really hard to leave an abuser. So if you haven't been in that situation, the best thing you could do for someone if you think they're in that kind of situation is love them, be there for them, say, I'm here for you. If you want to talk, if you need a safe place, maybe like a safety plan. But I would be very careful. If you surely think they're in a very abusive relationship or marriage, be very careful with what you say to them, maybe on the phone or text message, because very likely that abuser is reading it. So I'd be very careful. For me, what I personally do, I put it on my Facebook quite a few times that if anyone I know is in an abusive relationship and they need to leave, I told them like a code would be like, ask me over for like a pizza, or say, hey, Ashley, I would like to get a pizza with you. So therefore, the abuser would have no idea what we're talking about. They think we're legit just talking about getting a pizza and hanging out. So I try to have a code thing like, okay. So either do you need me to call the police, or do you need to talk to me or something? So I think that's another way to go about it. So just be loving, be there for them, care for them, but don't pressure them, because sometimes it can actually make them become more isolated than they were in the first place, because now you're like, whoa, why are you going against me and stuff like that. So you got to be really careful.
And that is such an important point too, because something that I can't even remember. I've recorded so many videos lately, but I was doing a video the other day and I seriously felt so pulled to really emphasize the fact that no one should call out the victim directly or go and approach the abuser. And like, because those are some of the worst things that you could do for a variety of reasons. Because one, if you go directly to the abuser, if the victim doesn't have a safe way out, that's only going to make it worse on them.
Absolutely. And that might have just been you just might have sealed their death sentence for that. Like, seriously.
And that's why it's so important to have this awareness and understanding, and why I'm so like on fire to get this education out to like businesses and pastors and like anyone who is a leader over people. We are well beyond the point of saying it's not my problem. Like, no, if you're a leader, you've got people looking up to you, and chances are if they're not in the home, that's probably the one safe place that they have, and you need to be aware. But that's a rant for like a whole
You're totally right. Because, it's not just, oh, that's not my problem. Like, it is. Because if you know or you feel like something's being done to someone and you're not saying anything, then you've taken the side of the oppressor. So it's
100%.
just, so you just, you got to be careful and everything. And obviously, want to make sure that they're safe. You want to make sure you're safe and everything. But if you're seeing someone who is like very standoffish and like, and freaks out, like, they're very skittish, if you try to hug them when they used to be maybe like a hugger, but now they're really skittish, if they have marks on them, they don't want to talk about it. Oh, they're, I just, and they give you some like lame excuse. Oh, I hit myself, or oh, I wasn't paying attention. Very likely that person is really being abused. So you just gotta be careful and, love them and everything, but they have to be willing to leave the relationship themselves, because it just, you can't make someone leave that abusive situation. It has to be the point where they're ready to leave. So just don't walk away from them. Don't be like, oh, well, they won't leave. It's their own like, it just, you don't understand when it's so psychologically traumatizing over and over and over again. Like, and they're really, I mean, they're really smart. Like these, like abusers, like they know what they're doing, especially like if you have really low self-esteem. Well, they're going to play on that. So like in the beginning, you're so beautiful. I love you. You're so, like, stuff you're not used to hearing. Like they know what they're doing. So that, that makes you like them more. Oh, well, he says I'm beautiful, or she says I'm really good looking or whatever. Cause it can go for guys as well.
Mhm.
Guys, I know there's a really big stigma. Men don't talk about it or whatever, but abuse is both ways and everything. And it's just like they might tell you things that you're not used to hearing, or maybe you have a bad relationship with one of your parents, or you didn't have a good relationship with your parent as a child. Well, when you don't have a good relationship with one of your parents or both of your parents as a child, it absolutely manifests to how you receive love as an adult. So you don't process love in a normal way that you should. So you'll just take love in any way you can get it a lot of times as an adult, and it can come very dysfunctional, which would be like where an abuser can swoop in.
And that, you are speaking my language. This is all. I'm now like, I gotta like set my soapbox down, so I'm ready to pick it up. We're not here for that today. Okay, let's say I came to you and I said, you know what? I'm scared to come forward, but I think I want to. What are like a few things that you would tell me besides gathering evidence to be like things to be prepared for in the courtroom, things to be prepared for in this era of, I've seen a lot of like court done over Zoom, things like that. Like, what are the things that they would need to be prepared for
Sure.
going into that situation?
So if you were like, so if someone was reaching out to me and they were just like wanting to learn some information, now if I was to come on the case, I personally fill out the restraining order for you, or the injunction paperwork. So either or, whatever it's called. So I do the paperwork for you. Whatever evidence you have, can you describe whatever incidents you have? So, but if you're like, you know what, I can't afford an attorney, you should have some kind of legal aid, because I know you're located in Washington. Here in Florida, we have a bunch of different legal aids. We have domestic violence shelters. They will help you. Here where I live in Central Florida, there is a domestic violence center inside the courthouse. They will help you fill it out. So I don't know if Washington has that, but I would say, listen, if you don't want a lawyer, but you want someone to try to help you, absolutely do that. You can reach out to domestic violence shelters, see if they'll help you fill out the paperwork, see if there's local legal aids, or people that like legal clinics. You can see if the courthouse will help you, if there's somewhere in the courthouse that can help you. Me personally, like if I'm just gonna just help you out and you're like, Ashley, what do I do? You need to fill out the paperwork and you need to be as specific as you possibly can. The more, like, more is better than few, but you don't want to have like 10 years of stuff or whatever, because what domestic violence is there immediate threat or harm or danger to you. So it needs to be immediate. So if there was like a threat like 10 years ago, but it's not a threat now, that's irrelevant and you're just wasting your time. I always tell my clients, try to make everything in the last 6 months. Can you go up to a year? Yeah, but that's not really like imminent. That's not really like a pressing threat or danger. So I always tell my clients, let's try to do the last 6 months, what the most recent events have. If you know the actual dates, put it down like when you're filling out the paperwork. So June 12th, 2021, he or she came over or whatever and they hit me or they pushed me against the wall. Kind of explain your situation. You don't need to make it like a page long, but try to make it maybe like a long paragraph or like a couple of paragraphs. but try to stick right to the facts. Like, going through my text messages or whatever. So if you have a text messages, maybe attach some of those, okay? If you have like a video recording or something, attach that. If you're going to the actual physical courthouse, actually, I don't know how that works if you, because I always do it electronically, but depending on where you are, they might take like a recording. If they don't take it there, then when you have the hearing, you can bring it with you. So make sure you have enough stuff as you can. If you have witnesses, make sure you put your witnesses' names. I have witness blah blah blah. They saw this on this time, this date. Saw this person do this to me. So just specific is terrific. Okay, you want to be as specific as you can. Dates are great. If you can't remember the exact date, put the month, but try to make it like the last 6 months if you can. If it's like a year or longer, that's not really like a close, imminent, like it's not like a really close threat or danger. It needs to be close. And then when you have the hearing, just make sure you have everything with you and stuff. So you can do it. You don't have to have an attorney, but the more you have to build your case, the more stuff you have, the better it'll be.
This
I
is
hope that
always
helps.
a question that I have had when it comes to the video, because what I have seen, I was going to be a lawyer, and then I decided I wasn't about all clearly not about that life. But and a lot of what I know is unfortunately from like watching Law and Order on TV. But from what I understand, when someone doesn't know that they're being recorded, that can't be used as evidence.
Yeah,
So how does that work?
Yeah, so now I haven't had that happen to me yet in any of my cases, but yeah, like to my knowledge, because I don't want to give incorrect legal advice, but to my knowledge, if you're not telling a person that you're recording them and then you just record them, like you can't just go and submit that into court. But if it's something like, it was like an alarm system on the outside of your house and you're recording it, and maybe this person was trying to bust in your house or something, yeah, that you can use in court because like that's a surveillance. That should not be a problem coming in. But if it's like inside your house or you're just taking your phone and recording them, I'm not going to give any legal advice, but I would say if you're going to record someone on your phone, I would highly recommend saying while you're recording them, I am recording you. But it'll be up to a judge whether it comes in or not, because you're not supposed to just go around recording people. So did you get their consent? Because if you don't get their consent, then very likely it probably won't come in. But if they're doing something that's like harmful, it might come in. Honestly, every judge is different, every state's different. So just check, see if you're allowed to. But I would never just go and record someone without saying, just so you know, I am recording you. And make sure that part of you saying that, you are recording that. I am recording you just so you know. It might not come in, but it might. So
the reason I ask is because a lot of the video evidence is so important, because like that's where it's actually happening. But if you like look at an abuser and say I'm going to record you, I mean, some crazy ones sometimes they do, but a lot of the times they know how to put on that face, and they just are so sweet. So I've always wondered how that works.
So yeah, so normally people who are an abuser or people who are crazy, they're only going to hide they're crazy for so long. So a lot of my family law cases and my injunction cases, I always tell them, like, when I now come on the case, you say nothing mean to them in the text message from here on out. Nothing mean in text message form here on out, because they're only going to keep their niceness for so long, but you can use those text messages against them. You can absolutely do that. I've done that for my clients and stuff like that. So, and I have text messages from my clients' ex, like, oh, I hate you. I wish you were dead. I'm sorry I ever met you. I hate you. I'm sorry I ever married you, or whatever. Like, yeah, and if it sounds threatening, yeah, you can absolutely admit that in court. But I always tell people, if you're in that kind of like relationship, be nice all the time in your text messages, because if it does come into court, because they can use it against you and say, whoa, this is what you said. Mm-hmm. So if you stay nice, then they'll see them for how that person truly is. So I would tell my clients, always stay nice. Yeah, and if they make you mad or whatever, just go send that text message to yourself. Or just send it to like an email to yourself, like type it up and then delete it. Don't send an angry message to someone who's an abuser. You know what I mean? or someone you have kids with that it may be used against you down the road. You know what I mean? Just always text people in a way that it could be used against you in court, because it absolutely could be. And I mean that seriously. Text people the way, like, if you don't care if this is going to come into court, that's how you should text people or email them.
And that's something that, like, for me, I kept in mind right away, because I started noticing patterns, and it's like, man, I got screenshotable evidence right here. And I was like, well, if I'm not careful, so does he. And
Yeah.
so I was so on top of it. And I've got records for the last like 6 years. Thank God for Facebook Messenger. I went back and I screenshotted everything, because I knew that if the time ever does come, you gotta, as the kids say, have your receipts. Like, be ready. Oh my gosh, there's now my brain's like going a mile a minute, because there's so many things.
No, it's okay. Well, here, so while you're thinking, I'll actually tell you about an injunction case that I had or whatever. So I felt really bad. So normally I only represent the petitioner, meaning the person who's filing to get the restraining order. Normally I only represent them. So I got a case a couple weeks ago or whatever. Now, restraining order or injunction cases are very fast. I did look it up for Washington, and it was the same amount of time that it is here in Florida. So once you file the injunction, you have 2 weeks until the hearing happens. So sometimes they might issue a restraining order, like a temporary restraining order, until that hearing, or they might not, and then they just might have you have the hearing or whatever. So it varies depending on how serious the judge thinks it is. But it's like, so I signed on this case a couple weeks ago, and I felt really bad. Like, this dad, like, and I can't even tell you, like, all the evidence, like, he had compiled against his ex. And so she filed a restraining order against him, and also for their 2 children. So he wasn't able to see his 2 children for almost 3 weeks or whatever until we had this hearing, and it was really psychologically affecting him. Now, normally I get a little hesitant with the respondent side, because I'm like, what did you do? So I normally get a little hesitant, but it's like, after talking to him, I'm like, no, I was like, I think this guy is really legit. And he gave me like 5 witnesses, and I talked to all of them, and all of them were like, no, he's actually the good parent. And some of them had actually known her most of her life. And they were like, it was really sad. And, you know, in these cases, like, really hurt my heart, because if this restraining order had been granted, he wouldn't have been able to see his children. And I mean, so it like, they're really personal to me, because I mean, there's children involved in a lot of these cases. And it's like, you know, maybe one parent really is a terrible parent, but maybe that parent really isn't a bad parent at all. That she was claiming all these things against him, but she had no evidence, like no pictures, no photos, no videos, literally nothing. And the witnesses we had were like, no, she's actually the problem. It's not him at all. And she actually ignores her children, and she's actually the abusive one. It's not him at all. And I just like, and it's really sad, because like these cases really hurt my heart, and it's just because the children are the ones that get affected. You know, it's like, you cannot like the other spouse, but don't ever file a restraining order against someone if that person's not actually a threat and you're just doing it to be retaliatory. That is a terrible thing to do to that parent, especially if it was to get granted. You know what I mean? So it is very serious. So don't ever do that to be like retaliatory, like, oh, I can't stand my ex. Don't do that. If that ex is not really a threat, you're using the system to benefit yourself, and that's not okay. So, and that's what she was doing against him, and it was not okay. So thankfully he's able to see his kids now. So we're working it out.
That brings up, because I've been trying to figure out how to word it, but I like the word retaliatory. Could the fact that she did that be used against her? Be like, you literally tried to get in the way just because you wanted to be whatever?
Absolutely. It absolutely could have been. So what happened was, so our hearing was supposed to be this Tuesday that just passed. So what had happened was, at our hearing, she brought her kids to the hearing. Now, the hearing was virtual, but she brought her kids because we could hear them screaming in the background. You're not allowed to do that. Like, in hearings, especially an injunction hearing, you cannot have your children. I don't know how Washington is, but that's how it is here in Central Florida. So you cannot bring your kids or whatever. And so she did that. And then also, me and the other attorney on the other side, we needed more time than the judge was able to give. So she was like, let's reset it for like a couple of weeks or whatever. So our hearing's actually coming up in a couple of weeks. So we haven't had the actual hearing, but me and her attorney are actually trying to work it out so we can hopefully dissolve the injunction and it just goes away. But then take it but if she would have I honestly truly hope the judge would have seen that she was just doing it to be retaliatory against him, because he really loves his kids and it was really harming him. Because I mean, I told him, I was like, listen, I was like, if like, you know, you're abusive towards her doing this, because I'm not going to represent someone who's like that, because I want to help the survivors. I mean, I don't judge you if you're the abuser, but I would rather not be on that side, because I'm not a criminal attorney. But no, I knew it was her. I knew it was her, and hopefully the judge, after we would have presented our case, would have seen that she was doing it to be retaliatory. And to answer your question, yeah, you can get in trouble for that. You can absolutely get in trouble. I don't know if she would go to like jail, maybe, because you're lying under oath. So she could have gone to jail. Do I see a judge doing that? Probably not. I mean, could they? Yeah, but I don't think they would probably do that. But I was hoping the judge would see that he's actually very loving and he hasn't done anything wrong, and it's actually her. So, because the witnesses were going to prove, no, it's her, it's not him. So we actually now have a paternity case. So a paternity case is when you're not married to someone, but you had a child outside wedlock. So we're having a paternity case for him right now that we just started. So she can't take the kids and just leave, because she wants to take the kids and move like a couple hours away. And once you have this case going, you can't do that. You can't just pick up the kids and leave, because now there's a legal case. So you can't do that. So if that answers your question.
Thank you for sharing that, because a lot of the times what I see, what I've personally experienced, and what a lot of people that I know have experienced, is that most of the system is geared towards protecting the abuser and assuming that everything is the victim's fault. And what a lot of people don't realize is how exhausting it is for the victim to pursue this, because they have to deal with re-traumatizing themselves every single day, showing up and dealing with people saying dumb things like, oh, we've talked about how much I hate this phrase, but like, oh, you should have just left, or you should have done this, all the time. And what I just want people to get that this is work, and it's not just like showing up and getting a restraining order. It's not just showing up and suddenly having everything fixed and hunky-dory and done. There's a lot of, there's stigma, there is work, there is blood, sweat, and tears, there's fear that all goes into it. And
Absolutely.
that is not brought up or discussed enough at all, which is why, because I did a interview with Lisa Van Leeuwen for Your Record, and she made this point of like, once you do finally like get out, you're so tired. And the last thing you want to do is come up with more mental energy to go into the court, to do all of this stuff, to fight this fight, to potentially lose, like all of these things. And that's why this understanding is so important, because without support and without showing up for survivors, I mean, heck, it's already dismal as it is, but there's no hope of change. And it's,
yeah.
Oh.
You know, and it's sad because it's like, you know, and then sometimes you get a restraining order. Now, I would never say don't get one. Absolutely get one if you ever feel like if you truly feel like you need one, absolutely. But then I've seen it where the system kind of works against you as well. So I had another case. So my client, we were extending her restraining order. So I wasn't on her first case. So she had a restraining order. It was granted for like 6 months, which I don't know why, because that was dumb. And even the next judge that came on the case was like, why was this only granted for 6 months? And I'm like, I don't know. I wasn't on the case. So the first one was only granted for 6 months, which is really stupid. So we had to bring him back to court. And we had a pretty decent amount of evidence against him with a lot of his Facebook messages. Now, his Facebook was private, but they had a mutual friend that was sharing the information with her with what he was posting. And he was saying very highly offensive things, and like, I mean, me looking at it as an outside observer, I'm like, wow, this guy's really mentally disturbed, and he seems like he might kill her. Like, because he was just like, I hope you die, and he said like very racist things to her, and called her a pedophile against their own child. Like, it was really sick stuff. So anyway, so we had the the injunction hearing to extend the current one. We were able to get it granted, so we got it extended for 3 years, which is pretty normal here in Florida. I asked for it for longer, but they said no, we're only going to do 3 years. So I was like, all right, whatever. So we got it for 3 years, And then 4 days later, he shows up at her job, okay? He shows up at her job 4 days later after the restraining order has now been extended, and then the police refused to arrest him. And I was like, what? And she was freaking out because now she's reliving this trauma. Like, so she's freaking out. And now my poor client thinking she's going to lose her own job because he's showing up and she's freaking out. Okay. So I was like, first of all, you need to call the police first. I'm like, you call me the lawyer second, but you need to call the police first. Well, the police come and they refuse to arrest him. And I was like, what? And the police were like, well, he hasn't been served the injunction. And I was like, he was at the hearing 4 days ago. He doesn't need to be served the injunction to be arrested. He was at the hearing. He voiced his opinion. He knows. No, we're not going to arrest him. And I was like, and that stuff really, really bothers me I have nothing bad to say about police because listen, I'm not one of those people. I care about police very much, and I pray for them. But sometimes they don't know the law when they think they do because they should have arrested him. He was at that hearing when the restraining order was extended and he should have been arrested and he wasn't. And now we have to go back to court for a violation of the injunction. And like our hearing is not even until like September and he violated it like last month. So you can have an injunction. I'm not saying don't get it. Absolutely get it. But then it's like, then you have those times where you're like, crap, I have it. And now it's like, it's like, what am I supposed to do with this? Because the system wasn't working for her. And it's sad. He did end up getting arrested. We reported it. I made sure to contact the prosecutor, the state prosecutor, and his probation officer. So he did get arrested. But it was like, we really had to jump through some loopholes when we shouldn't have had to. So.
And that is what is so, people underestimate the severity of what people mean when they say that this person's abusive. Like, they didn't arrest him. Well, that night he could have killed her. Like it's straight up. And then it would have been, and they would have, and what if they would, I don't know, maybe they would feel guilt about it. Maybe they would. Well, I didn't know. There's so much of all of that. I'm so sick of hearing that.
I know. And she had the restraining order on her because I always tell clients, keep one in your car, like keep it in your glove compartment. So it is always on you, and keep the other one in your house. Always have one in your car and keep the other one in your house, always, in case you need to call the police and you have to just physically show them. And I'm just like, but because he wasn't served, now we should have just talked to, I should have just called the supervisor and spoke to the supervisor and just had him arrested. But that was my fault. I actually didn't do that, which that's the one thing I wish I would have done is I should have just called the supervisor of the police, that local police station, and said, they're not arresting him. He was absolutely at the hearing. He has notice. It has been extended. I don't care that he hasn't been served. You absolutely have to arrest him because they should have absolutely they should have done it. I was so mad about that because I'm like, you're right. She could have died because, and he was like, oh, I didn't know she worked here. Yeah. And her place of work was confidential. So he obviously followed her because he did not know where she worked. And then he was like, oh, no, I didn't know she worked here, but he had like a gift for their daughter, and he specifically asked for her by her name. So I'm like, okay, you're clearly lying. So
this is why, like, education is so important. We have got to get people to understand the realities of this, because I need to like keep a running list of all of these articles that I read. But I came across this article that was written by a police officer where he was called to a domestic violence situation. And of course, everything seemed fine. There seemed to be no issues. The abuser was remarkably calm. The victim was just sitting there showing no signs of anything. They left and he murdered her that night.
Oh my God.
And so it's like, and he feels guilt because he didn't know, there was nothing that he could do because of the technicalities that they need to do X, Y, and Z. And that, if we don't get this education and this understanding into the heads of the only people that could potentially help, because if the cops wouldn't have shown up, she may still be alive today. But because it was like that next step and there wasn't any fulfillment, he was like, well, you did this, look at what you made me do. And now a life is lost. And this happens all the time. I personally know 2 people that this happened to. may their souls rest in peace. And my mom knows someone, and it's just, that is why I can't state enough how important getting this education and understanding is, because I don't care how much you read a textbook. If you don't understand what you're walking into, I don't care how much training or how physically fit you are or any of that. If you can't go in and save a life, then then what's the point?
I know.
And
you know, and it's sad because it's like, if someone's not willing to press charges either, and it's like, how are you going to press charges when you live with your abuser? Your abuser has all the money. Your abuser is not letting you work. You have children with this abuser. You don't have any friends anymore because that abuser isolated you. And it's sad. It hurts my heart. But it's like, if anyone that you have is listening that is in that kind of relationship, there are absolutely resources available. There are. And there's people out there that want to help you. And there's people out there who do care. And if someone says it's not going to happen again, if someone ever hurts you or hits you, slaps you, chokes you, destroys anything, and there's a lot of signs. And when you're in that kind of situation, the signs, but you choose to ignore it. I have been there myself. I've been there a couple of times. I get it. I have seen the signs, and you just kind of ignore them, or you just brush them aside because, no, that's not me, or no, he's not that bad, or, oh, it'll get better. It doesn't. It will never get better. It only progressively gets worse, and it will keep getting worse, and it will keep getting worse, and it'll keep getting worse until something will happen. And it's not okay. And it's, you should never, ever live in a constant state of fear, or am I going to die, or is this person going to hurt me? No. And no one loves me. That's crap, and that's a lie. You absolutely are lovable. You are beautiful, and it doesn't matter what anyone tells you. I don't care what anyone says. You are beautiful, and you do matter. And people will be so upset if something happened to you. Like, this person is not worth your life, and especially if you have children. What happens if something happens to you? Now your children are going to be raised by an abuser. And what can happen with your children? Like, statistically, your children, like one of those children, especially if it's like a boy, can grow up to be an abuser themselves. So it is very important, and it's sad because my heart hurts. I've been there. I've seen my friends there. And it's like, you can't make someone leave, but it's like, you have to realize it will never get better. It will only get worse, more intense. The physical violence gets more intense, and it's not okay. And you should never, ever have to live in a constant state of fear. Never, never. Life was not meant to be lived that way. You matter, and you shouldn't live like that. And when you do leave that abuser, yeah, it's really hard in the beginning, but each day it gets better, and it gets better, and it gets, and you heal more, and you heal more. And then when you leave that person, you do meet other survivors, and you're like, oh crap, like, I'm not the only one that's going through this, because you're not. A lot of people have gone through the same thing, before you, and they've come after you. And, and you don't want to be that person who doesn't make it out alive. So if you're in that kind of situation, please, please get help. Please get help. But make sure your phone is not being monitored, because if you look up any of these domestic violence sites or the national number, you can make your situation a lot worse. So please make sure your phone's not being monitored before you do that. But, get help. Like, you should never, ever have to live in fear, ever.
And how it's so, this whole conversation, all of this, there's no way to get around the heaviness of it. But it's just like, you may not even, and again, this is why I want people to become more aware and understanding of what people go through, because sometimes they can't access resources. Yes. Is all the internet on their phone right there? Yes. But if they do look it up, they may be signing their death sentence. Like, they may make it, or they may wish that they were going to be dead at the end of whatever happened. Like, all of these things come into play, and knowing that some people are so caught up in that. And then there's and then that's another about how, like, all the people that think they deserve it. I made a TikTok the other day, and it was a couple weeks ago now, and I'm still like trying to process it. But from the people who don't know what's abuse and what isn't, because they grew up being taught that love was violence. Love was being gaslit out of their mind. Like, they weren't allowed to demand respect. They weren't allowed all of these things. And so there are people that walk into these relationships going, well, my daddy hit my mama and they said they loved each other. And even if you don't have that thought on a conscious level, it's subconscious there in your mind. So then you think that this is love. You think that this is normal. And even when you come to the realization, you may not have the ability to get out. And so what I always say is don't wait for things to get physical to get out. Like, not to say, that's not to put anyone down where it has gotten that way, but there are always signs, and education and recognizing those signs before it escalates. Cause like for me, it started out with all of the manipulation, and the moment he got in my head, that's when everything went. That's when, he threw a pillow at me, and then he put his fist through the wall. And then, it only escalated from there. And we give excuses, little bits along the way, until we're so sucked in. Sorry, I went on a little rant, but this is
No, I get it. I honestly, Karleigh, I've been there as well. And, I dated someone last year only for like a month, and, and he was a complete con artist. And, I thought this man was like a good man, a successful man. He just seemed really amazing. And then there was a lot of little things like, and I won't even go into it, whatever, but it was really sick stuff. And it just really, once they get into your mind, it's just like, it's a done show. It's like you have to get out while you're still able to get out. And I'm so grateful to God that I was able to get out. And there were so many signs, but you just ignore them or you push them to the side. You always know the signs. So some signs I'll tell you, like, okay, the obvious ones are like hitting you, punching you, slapping you, choking you, shoving you, destroying personal property. Are they damaging furniture, walls, just like you said? Absolutely, because if they hit the wall, very likely next time it could be your face, or it could end up becoming your face. Do they prevent you from seeing your friends, your family? Do they control your finances? Do they force you to account for what you're spending on? Do they belittle you in public? I'm sure they do it in private, but do they do it in public as well? Are they extremely jealous? Do they make false accusations? And don't give me that crap. He really cares, or she really cares. No. Oh, it's really cute. No, it's not. There's a difference between being a little bit like, okay, a little bit, we get that. But when someone's crazy, psycho, jealous of someone even looking in your direction, stop. That's not cute. He doesn't like love me. He doesn't care about, stop it. No, it's not. It is not cute. Well, it's different with me. No, it's not. And you know it's not. There is a difference between being a little jealous or whatever, because maybe a guy flirted with you, and then there's a difference between a guy looking at you. You didn't even know a guy looked at you because you were looking to the left, and this guy was looking at you to the right or whatever, and then it becomes some explosive. And again, the same thing for men too. We're not just gonna say it's with women. I mean, I've seen some crazy chicks out there, like psycho crazy stalking. I mean, no. Like, it's not okay. Crazy psycho jealousy is not cute. It does not mean they super care about you. Well, it's different for me. No, it's not. You need to stop. You need to get very aware of that. There's a difference between a little jealousy and psycho jealousy, yelling at you, starting fights and accusing you. Oh, do you like that guy? Yeah. Do you want to go home with him? I bet you slept with that. Like, no. That is a huge red flag. Okay, so sorry, that's my rant.
Oh no, you're fine. You're entitled to it. You go on. Like, because as you were talking, all I could think of were all of these movies that I watched growing up where all of that is romanticized. We're taught that, oh, he just cares about me so much. He doesn't want anyone to look at me. Oh my gosh, I want someone that, I want someone to be jealous of. Oh my God, like it was all I wanted. All I wanted my entire life. Like up until the point I was 23. All I want, actually probably closer to 25 to be honest. I wanted someone who cared about me so much that they didn't want anyone else to even come near. Like I was just like, because to me that was love. That's what it meant. That's what protection meant, was being owned, because it's what's romanticized. All the movies growing up, and I catch it now. And when you can't watch movies with me anymore. I'm a horrible person to watch movies with. So I'm like, no, that's gaslighting. That's projection. That's manipulation. That's cutting it real close. Like it's impossible. I'm not fun to watch movies with. I don't like watching movies with me. My brain ruins everything. But all of these things, we're taught that so much of this is love and that it's okay. And that's why I'm so grateful to you and for what you do and for being willing to take the time, because if we don't stand up and start sharing, because unfortunately it's on the victims, it's up to us. It's all on us in order to incite change, because no one else is going to do it. And so seeing people like you willing to take the time to help is, it just makes my heart so happy, because it is so much more rare than it should be.
Well, thank you. And I think it's great that, you know, what you're doing, because you're giving those who don't have a voice. And that's what matters, because it's like, you know, when you hear someone else that has been through the same thing as you have, or something similar or something like it, you know, it's easier to connect with them because they understand what you've been through. I have no problem telling people, like telling clients, listen, you know, I've been in this situation, I know what you're going through, because it helps them connect, because it's much easier to hear what someone has to say when they've been through the same thing, when you, rather than like, you have no idea what I've been through, so don't you dare tell me, because you have no idea what I've been through. And a lot of times my clients, especially the ones with the family law side, they do not ever say, I'm in a psychologically abusive marriage or relationship or whatever it is. They don't. They just tell me a couple of things, and I'm like, wait a second. And I just know right away they're in an abusive marriage or abusive relationship. They just say a couple of words, and I'm like, wait a second. Do they say this or this? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, you're in an abusive marriage and or an abusive relationship with that person or whatever. And they're like, oh, well, and then like they start connecting the dots, because I'm an outside observer just hearing you know, so the dots they start connecting and everything. And then, but I will say the good side of what I do is, like, so my client that was so unbelievably terrified, and I was like, this girl's gonna end up like in some kind of, I don't know, somewhere, because I was so terrified for her. And me as your lawyer, I can't tell you, you need to go get a gun. Because if I was to tell you go get a gun and you got a gun and then you shot your ex or whatever, guess who it's going to come back on? So, and it's sad, because I really do want to tell some of my clients, you need a gun, because I'm really worried about your safety. Like, you really need to get one. But I can't do that, because it's just, I can't say those kinds of things. But I have been.
Like how angry, because that just brings up a whole other point. Because I saw there is a big case. I'm telling you, I need to start like saving these freaking articles. But in Australia, there's a woman who killed her abusive ex, and she's going to jail. Like, all of these things, they're not even taking into account everything that happened to her, not taking into account the way he beat her and raped her, like all of these things. And she killed a person, and that's the end of it. And all of these people are in support of the abuser and saying, well, she should have handled it differently. Like,
wow. Wow.
I'm sorry. Why are we sitting here sympathizing with abusers and once again telling victims to sit down and shut up and that it's all their fault? Like, and don't get me started like on the Bill Cosby crap too. Like all of this just coming out. We are bombarded again and again and again with the message that victims don't matter and it's somehow our fault and we somehow brought it upon ourselves. And if we just would have done all of these things, because of course, we're not going to take brain science into it. We're not going to take into account the fact that they grew up in an environment. We're not going to take into the account that the abuser psychologically got under their skin for 6 months before actually putting their hands on them. We're not going to do that. We're just going to blame at the person who's already sitting there crying, bleeding on the sidewalk. And I am...
I know, you know, and it's so sad and it's so unbelievably frustrating. And so what I was going to say, so the client that was incredibly scared, so that was the one that we got the injunction extended. So it got extended for 3 years. That's the one who came to her job and everything. But now, initially, when I took her on, scared, shaking all the time, in a constant state of stress. But now that she's been away from him longer and longer and longer, she's finally now like, and she said she was going to start taking like Muay Thai classes so she could defend herself. And I was like, yes. Like, and so I've been trying to partner with self-defense instructors and martial arts instructors where I live, so I can start helping my clients who are coming out of this. Because when you come out of these relationships or marriages, what people don't really seem to think, like what a lot of people don't really think about, is you tend to date the same kinds of people over and over and over again. So if you're not healed from that abusive relationship you just came out of, you can go right into another one. And a lot of times it happens over and over again. And you're like, why does this keep happening? Well, you tend to date the same kinds of people over and over again. So until you address the underlying issue, why do you allow this? Or why are you drawn to these kinds of people or whatever? Like, so counseling might be good. Or maybe you don't need a counselor. Maybe you could just do like a stress coach or an anxiety coach or a trauma coach. You might not even need to go to counseling. Counseling is great, but maybe, you know, you can do a different approach. But you got to know what the underlying issue is. Why do I keep getting in these kinds of relationships or these kinds of marriages? I had to step back and I had to do it myself because I had, I don't know, it was like 2 or 3 abusive relationships that I had been in. And I'm like, and if you know me, you're like, I would never assume you're that kind of person. Well, you know, but domestic violence has no discrimination depending on your background, what race you are, where you grew up. You can grow up in a nice place, a poor, it doesn't matter. It can affect anyone and it affects everyone. But I had to do a very like a deep analyzation of myself. And I was like, what's going on, Ashley? And I was like, because you allow it. Because I was like, why do I keep, like, you know, why do I get these guys that are jerks and they treat me like crap? I'm like, I don't deserve this crap. And I'm like, because you allow it. And I was like, holy crap, I do. So I don't allow it anymore. You're not going to be disrespectful and treat me like a piece of, I don't do that anymore. So, but if you don't realize what you're doing, it's going to keep happening over and over and over. And it's not like you're a problem and you're stupid or you're not. A lot of times when you're an abuse victim, it's because you're seeking love. And if you don't grow up receiving like a healthy kind of love, you will take love wherever you can get it. And a lot of times it will come with very unhealthy kind of love. That's usually what happens. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. You're a child now, like as like an adult, but you're you know, if you can't receive it in a healthy way, you're just going to take it from whoever you can get because you're it like on a subconscious level. I don't deserve healthy love because I didn't get healthy love. So I'm just going to take it wherever I can get it. And a lot of times an abuser picks up on that. Like they're not dumb. Like they know what they're doing. So it's not your fault. And don't ever think it is your fault or you deserve this or, oh, I'll never find anyone or, oh, I deserve to be treated like this. No, you don't. There is someone out there who will love you, or you know what? Or you can just be by yourself and be happy with that too. So, you know, you don't have to be with someone to be happy. And if you're not happy alone, you're not going to be happy with someone else, you know? So just know like there's so many resources out there to help you because you should never have to live in a constant state of fear or am I going to die today? And especially if you have children, please, please try to get out. Please try to get out because your children are seeing that and you don't want your own child to end up becoming an abuser when they get older or becoming in the same kind of relationship when they get older because it very well could happen. You want to be the one that breaks that cycle. So you can be that one that breaks that cycle. You have the choice to leave.
That is so good. And that is so important. And please, please do not be sitting here misconstruing what Ashley is saying. Listen to the words coming out of her mouth. She is not saying you asked for it when she says allow it. The reason that this is brought up is not to make you feel like it was your fault. This is brought up as an empowering statement. Like you don't have to allow that anymore. Like you don't have to say, you don't have to be okay with someone treating you like garbage. You don't have to be okay with someone talking to you that way. You don't have to be okay with someone putting their hands on you. Like that's empowering. Like you have so much life ahead of you and you have that much choice. But I don't want to hear anybody misconstruing it as victim blaming. No, I get a lot of angry, I get so many angry survivors.
No.
And I understand, but please listen to what we're saying because everything is said with love. And if you leave the love out of it, you're going to hear an entirely different message. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah,
I think
no,
so
and thank you for saying that. No, it's not your fault as being, it's not, because you don't like, oh, I asked for that. No, you don't. It's hard, you know, and it's a healing and it takes time and it very well could take counseling or coaching. You know, maybe you do need it, maybe you don't, but please, please, please try to get out. Please try to get out. Like, because it will, I can promise you, I've been there, Karleigh's been there, so many others who have been there. It does not ever get better. It only gets worse. It will never. And don't say, well, that's not, no, because I said the same thing. Well, that's not me. No. Or he's different with, no. It will never get better.
People get real mad at me when I say this, but I say it all the time. It's like, honey, I hate to tell you, but you're not the special one. You're not going to be the one to like break through his ice cold heart and you're going to, get the romantic ending. It's not.
It's hard. I
Not.
get it. I've been there myself. I get it. I like, oh, well, but with me, like, it's not, no. And why would you want to be that one? Like, oh, when he starts off or she starts off like that, why would you want to stay with someone who does treat you like that? Why, like, I don't want to stay there till the ending to see if there is some kind of happy ending when there very likely is not going to be. But you deserve to be with someone who's going to love you for you and treat you like you matter because you do matter. You don't deserve to be treated like this. You don't. And you don't have to. So I truly hope that, that everything that we said, you really understand that it comes from love, because we say this with so much love because we really care. And we don't ever want to read about you in like a newspaper or online or whatever, like, because you matter.
Like, I just want to like let that simmer. I think I'm going to like just quote that out and put that everywhere, because that was just the perfect way to end this episode. Thank you so much, Ashley. I am so grateful to you. And I genuinely feel like we could just sit here and talk for the next 3 hours and I wouldn't even have an issue. So before I let you go, people who want to connect with you, people who want to learn more, people who are in the Central Florida area, where can they learn more about you and get to know everything, Ashley?
Sure. And even if you're not in Central Florida and you have questions, or if you just want to talk, I'm okay with that. Like, you don't have to just be here in Central Florida. If you're like, Ashley, I would really like to talk to you about my situation, I can't give you legal advice if you're like outside of Florida or whatever, but I'm absolutely happy to talk to you. So my last name is really long and ridiculous. So it's Baillargeon. But if you look up like Ashley Baillargeon, I should come up. Like, if you Google me or you send me like a Facebook message, or if you reach out to like my law firm. So it's Ashley, Ashley, and then my last name, prepare, it's ridiculous. It's B as in boy, Aillargeon. And honestly, I'm happy to speak to someone, because you shouldn't just keep it inside. So I don't care wherever you're located. I'm more than happy to speak to you if you reach out. So feel free to reach out.
That is awesome. And I'm going to make sure that I've got all of that, because my name, people can't spell my name at all until I've done it 30 times. So I'm going to make sure all of those links are in the show description and the show notes, depending on where you're listening. And Ashley, thank you so much for your time. I am so grateful for you.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad that I was able to talk to him, especially about something that's so incredibly important. And I really, if it even helps one person, this was so incredibly worth it, because I know what it's like to be like, oh, I don't matter. I won't find love. No one cares. Like, no, you matter. Don't ever let anyone tell you don't matter. You won't find someone as good as me. I'm the best. No, that's such crap. You're the best that psycho is ever going to get. Don't ever forget that. You so matter. Don't ever let anyone tell you different. You absolutely matter.
I wish I need to get like a prop mic or something so I can just do the mic drop, because I can't. I want to, but this is the only one I got, so I can't. I need to just get a prop to just clink it, because that was perfect. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. This is awesome, and I'll give you that information. Like, it's my Facebook and everything.